Hello. One second, got small problems with setting it up. Uh, I can't simply see the chat right now, so just give me a moment. Okay, should be all right. Let me just, yeah. Okay, so first of all, let's start in Blender. And what we want to do, we want to create the mesh for the our tree, and also like the blobs for the where we will build the leaves and all that. So we will start. Also, I got the button capture in the corner, so you can see what I'm pressing in the Blender. So let's start by creating cylinder, and let me zoom in, and let's set the vertices to 6, because we will keep it low poly. We don't need to like complicate stuff. Then what we want to do, we want to move it slightly in edit mode. Also, let's disable it. Let's go to the front view. Let's set it up so it lines up with x-axis. And now we want to create our trunk. And also what we want to do, we want to delete this face. So we'll delete it. So because it won't be rendered and won't be seen in the Godot, so we don't really need that. And it's always good to save the performance. So now we want to extrude our trunk. So we will select the top vertices and we will press E to extrude and then scale it. And let's move it slightly and also rotate it maybe. Let's extrude it again. Let's scale it. Let's rotate it, extrude, scale. Let's move it slightly, extrude, rotate, extrude, scale. And now, because we got the tip, we got like 6 vertices here. We don't need that. So what we will do, we will press M and we will merge at center. Then also here, maybe we will scale it slightly. Here, how it's looking. Let's go into wireframe. Maybe slightly off here, like that, like that. Yeah, that's all right. Then also the base, let's slightly modify it. Let's add some volume to it and also like random shape, maybe something more like that. And let's align them again. Yeah. Yeah, I say that's all right. And now what we want to do is create our branches. So what we will do, we will use the knife tool And let's cut some pieces of the mesh. So just like that. And let's add more cuts to it. And let's merge those vertices to create our shape. So now we can extrude the whole thing. So we'll select it, extrude, scale it. Let's move it a little. Yeah. Again, extrude, scale, move, rotate, extrude, scale. And I think we'll merge that. And let's create some more branches. Let's say here on the other side. So we'll use knife tool. If only it would behave. So let's create our cut. And another one. Let's merge them. Not at first, but at last. And yeah. Now let's extrude this again. Let's scale it, rotate it. Let's move it up a little. Then again, rotate, extrude. And yeah, I think that will be good enough, at least for the stream. So now let's merge it at center. And why can't I see the chat? Okay, I can't see the chat for some reason, so sorry about that. Let me try something different. Maybe like that. Okay. Now, also, I don't know if I... Okay. Now it should work correctly, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Oh, okay. Now that we got the shape, we can add the blobs to it. So we'll do UV sphere and let's reduce vertices to 6. Now we will select, oh, my bad, I done it wrong. What we want to do, we want to create new blob, UV sphere, but we want to detach it from the trunk. And then we want to move it, scale it, like that. We want to duplicate it, move it to different position, duplicate again, move it to different position. Maybe one more here as well. Let's scale it slightly. Yeah, that should do it. And now what we want to do, we want to slightly modify the shape so it's more chaotic and tree-like. Oh, okay, so quiet. let me adjust the volume. How's that? Okay, perfect. So now when we have all the blobs set up for our tree, I will use the sculpting mode because it's quite easier, and just go in, and I got the grab tool selected, so it won't modify our vertices, but we can move them around freely. So now we'll just shape it in some way to be more like a tree, really. So now just, it doesn't need to be super precise or anything like that, just looking like a tree. Maybe here, maybe slightly pull that down here. Maybe slightly over here. Okay. Yeah, that's looking fine. So let's go back to modeling. Let's unselect everything. And now we want to create a mesh that we will use to instance our leaves. And also that will be, that mesh will be textured. So we will, in Godot, we will use multi-mesh instance and we will use that mesh to basically populate the surface of our blobs that were created. So what we want to do is Shift A, mesh, plane, and it created the plane. Now we want to do Shift D, and it duplicated it. And now if we do R90 on X-axis, it rotated it. And now we want to duplicate it again, Shift D, and then Z90, rotate. But it didn't rotate correctly. Rotate Z, rotate Z90. There we go. Okay. But we want to combine all of those planes that we have created just now. So what we want to do is select them all and Control J. So we got one object instead of three separate objects. Now that's basically it for the Blender part. So modeling the trunk, extruding it, making the blobs, and our mesh that we will use for leaves. So now we want to export it to Godot. So we want to export GLTF 2.0, GLTF embedded, and I already exported the samples, basically empty scene, that's all, to the project. So I will export it again. And now we want to create the texture for our leaves. So I will jump to pixel edit. I prefer to use that because all pixel software, any type of really drawing software you can use, but I prefer to use pixel art software to create the texture because it will help to reduce issues with alpha scissors. So if we do white, and let me change the brush, and let me change the size, you can see now we will basically draw it, and the canvas size is 1024 by 1024. So we want to draw our texture. I'm using the mouse, but if you have drawing tablet, it will be easier. So just some blobs. And also it would be quicker on the drawing tablet, but oh well. Just random. It doesn't need to be like super precise or anything. across the whole canvas. Also, option that you can do is like connect each of them with like line that like, you know, like create the branches and all that, but I won't be doing that. I prefer to just stick it to blobs. And that, and also why we're using the white color, because in Godot, if we apply the texture, we can change the modulate value and it will change the color. So for example, instead of going back and forth from your texturing program that you chose and like modifying the color, we can use it straight from the from the Godot. We can set the colors of the leaves instead of like going back and forth, exporting and modifying it like that. This is why we're using the white color. So let's create some more. Oh, this is a slightly weird one, but it's okay. Here, here. All right. Okay. And now what we want to do is add some variation to the colors. So I will use the fill tool. Where is it? Where's my mouse? Here. And let me just adjust it. So let's make it slightly darker. And let's fill some blobs with darker color. So it will create variation when we apply the colors to it. Then let's slightly modify it as well. Let's do slightly like this brownish color. Let's do it again. Let's make it maybe slightly like this. Oops. Okay, so then we can export that to our Godot project. And let me change. Where is it? Yeah. And let's do leaves. Let's save it, save it. So now we got exported the our texture to the Godot. So now in Godot, let's do, we got, now you can see we got exported our tree scene, so our meshes and also our texture. So let's create new 3D scene and let's change the spatial to a world environment. And let's add the mesh instance. So let's call it ground. And let's add a new cube mesh. Let's change the sizes. So on the y-axis, let it be 0.1. Let's do 200 by 200. So we got the ground. Also, let's add the material to it. So new spatial. Let's do parameters, tune, and that's it. Oh, and also roughness to 0. Let's add light. So directional light should be fine. Let's rotate it slightly. Not on this axis, on this axis. It's very bright, but... And in shadow, what we want to do, we want to enable the shadow and also change the color of it. So because shadows are not black, never are. So we want to do slightly bluish, like this. And also what we want to do, oops, we want to do camera. So we will use the camera to If only I can see, there we go, the handle. Okay, and now let's open our exported scene. So open anyway, and you can see we got our tree. Oh, I know what I forgot. Let's jump to the Blender, and in Blender we want to shade smooth. So if you right click and shade smooth on the trunk, we want trunk to be shaded smooth. And then let's export it again. So here, importing asset, reload. Yeah. So now the trunk is shaded smooth. Now what we want to do is add to it multi-mesh instance, which we will use to create our leaves and populate the blobs with the leaves. Then in cylinder, we want to add material, spatial, and let's do parameters, tune shader, and let's set roughness to 0. So we got the tune shading on it. And now with multi-mesh instance, what we want to do is create multi-mesh on the top and then populate surface. And now we got target surface, source mesh. So target surface will be our sphere or the blobs. Then source mesh will be our plane, which will create the leaves. And then we got different parameters that we can set up. So we'll set up the target mesh as a sphere, source mesh as a plane. Then we keep it on y-axis. Let's add random rotation, random tilt, and let's set random scale to 1. And let's say we want 512 leaves. So then if we click populate, you can see we got this mess basically, but we can change it. So here you can see the Godot created our multi-mesh instance straight away, and we have mesh that we created for the leaves. So now if we click it, we can do surface, and it allows us to assign the material to all of this mess really. So we'll do that, and here we want to go into albedo, and in texture we want to drag our leaves, and you can see already we got this weird pattern. And also what we want to do in input, we want to set the input of the leaves to 2D pixel. This will help with alpha scissors because it won't do anti-aliasing of the texture or filter. So then in parameters, we want to set it to tune, and also tune. We want to cool mode to be disabled, so both sides of the planes are visible no matter which angle we're looking at. And then depth draw, we want to opaque prepass. So then when we set up the alpha scissors, the leaves will cast the shadow. So then we select use alpha scissors, and you can see already we got a tree, kind of. It doesn't have any color, so let's change that. Let's go to albedo and let's assign the color. So let's like this dark green, and we got the leaves ready. Also what we want to do, we want to hide the spheres so they are not visible through the mesh of the tree of our leaves. And then we want to also change the color of our trunk. So let's do the brownish dark brown color like that. Let's save it. Let's save in as, and save as tree too. Here we want to assign also the color to the ground, so we will change the albedo. Let's also set it to like darkish. Well, that's highly saturated. Let's do something like that. Yeah, this looks alright. So now let's save the scene, and let's link our tree scene, and here you go. our tree is in Godot or in our scene. Let's move the camera slightly. Oh, and also set it to current, and let's preview it. Maybe rotate it a bit. Yeah, that looks okay. Maybe rotate the tree itself as well. Okay, but as you can see here now, there is this weird problem where the leaves are very dark and some of them are very white, because how it works is Godot basically, as the planes are facing the light, they will be lit, but the other side of the planes, because we're using the cooling, disabled cooling on the planes here, like in parameters, because we're using disabled cool mode, the other side of the leaves are counted as well, the normal is not facing the light, so it darkens the whole leaf texture. So what we want to do to counter that, we want to go in our shader for the leaves, we want to go into transmission, we want to enable it, then we want to boost it. So let's set it to slightly like this, almost white but not exactly, and then we can save it. And now if we run the scene and save it again, you can see the leaves are much brighter and it's not so dark, and there is no like those dark spots, and also the variation is like shown. You have seen these dark spots, white spots, and yeah, basically that's how you do it. The other thing you can do also is to set the shading in Blender for the leaf mesh to smooth, which I didn't done. So let's do that quickly. So here, let's also shade smooth. Let's save it and let's export it again. I will probably need to set up it quickly yet again. So let me close this one. Let me reopen this one. Yeah, I need to set it up again. So let's do it quickly. Multi-mesh. Let's multi-mesh populate surface, sphere, plane, random rotation, random tilt, random scale 1, and let's set 512, populate, then here, let's do surface, parameters, tune, mix opaque prepass, cool mode disabled, then also use alpha scissors, then albedo, let's draw our texture, let's set the color quickly like that, here material as well, parameters, tune, albedo, brownish color, maybe slightly darker, something like that. Let's hide the spheres, save, scene, save scene as 3, save, okay. And it looks slightly different compared to what we had. Mesh here, and let's transmission on, let's do it like that and save. And yeah, that's basically how you create. I know what I didn't done. I didn't set up the roughness. That's why it doesn't look exactly right. The roughness 0, and here as well, roughness 0. So now it doesn't look very different, but it would sometimes. So yeah, that's basically how you can create trees or bushes or anything like that in Godot that is like slightly stylized. And also what I want to talk about is, because we're using multi-mesh instance, it's quite performance friendly, because all the meshes that we're creating for the leaves will be batched. So Godot will draw them in single draw call, instead of like if you would put them in place by hand, it would tank the performance because you would have all those vertices. So multi-mesh optimize this, and it will be rendered in single draw call. And also what is great about multi-mesh instance, you know how we created 512 instances, right? You can create the level of detail system based off that. So here you can see visible instance count. So if we would access it and, for example, control it via distance to the camera per tree, we can disable some of the instances that are visible. So we can create dynamic level of detail based on the distance to the camera. So because if I set it up like 7, 16, or slightly start growing up, it will add those leaves based on how close the player comes into this into the tree. But I won't be showing it because I don't really know how to code it right now. I didn't test it before the stream, so that would be probably a mess and would take quite a while to code in from scratch right now. But this is something you can do. And the thing is that all those instances will be in memory, however. So you need to basically, whenever you create those trees, you have to optimize it to your target, how to say, hardware that you plan to use. Well, not to use, but your players will use. So in that way, those 512 leaves are in the memory, but this will allow us to basically reduce the performance on the GPU. So yeah, I don't know, do you have any questions or anything like that? Because, well, mostly that's how you create the trees and bushes and all the different things. Okay, I guess judging by the chat, there is no questions to be asked. So thank you for being here on the chat, even though it's only like was 5 people at top. So thank you very much, and I will see you next time. I don't know what I will stream, what topic I will cover, but we will see.